Sarah and Emily were as different as sunshine and moonlight, yet they were the best of friends. They had known each other since kindergarten, sharing secrets whispered on the playground and dreams sketched in notebooks. Emily was like sunshine, bright and bubbly, with a smile that could light up a room. She was naturally good at everything she tried, whether it was sports, school, or making new friends. People were drawn to her easygoing nature and genuine kindness. Sarah, on the other hand, felt more like moonlight, quiet and observant, with a hidden depth. She was intelligent and creative, but often struggled with self-doubt. While Emily effortlessly excelled, Sarah had to work hard to achieve her goals. And lately, it felt like Emily was soaring while Sarah was stuck on the ground. Emily had landed a coveted job at La Boutique Chic, a small, exclusive store filled with beautiful clothes, sparkling jewelry, and elegant accessories. It was the kind of place Sarah only dreamed of shopping in. Emily loved her job, helping customers find the perfect outfit and being surrounded by such exquisite things. She often came home with stories of interesting people she had met and the fabulous pieces she had helped them discover. Sarah listened, but beneath her smiles, a seed of jealousy began to sprout. It wasn't that she didn't want Emily to be happy, but Emily's success highlighted Sarah's own perceived shortcomings. Sarah worked at a small bookstore, a job she enjoyed, but it didn't have the same glamour or excitement as Emily's world. The jealousy was a quiet monster, whispering insidious thoughts in Sarah's ear. It told her that Emily was getting everything she wanted, that life was unfair, and that Sarah deserved more. The monster grew stronger each day, feeding on Sarah's insecurities and resentment. One particular day, after Emily had described a stunning diamond necklace she had helped a customer purchase, the monster roared. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that Emily was living the life she deserved. A plan began to form in her mind, a desperate attempt to level the playing field, to bring Emily down a peg. It was a terrible plan, a plan born of jealousy and desperation, but Sarah couldn't seem to stop herself. The monster had taken over, and it was guiding her down a dark and dangerous path. She would frame Emily for stealing from the boutique. It would be a terrible thing to do to her best friend, but the monster whispered that Emily deserved it. La Boutique Chic was more than just a store, it was a jewel box of dreams. Nestled on a quiet, tree-lined street in the heart of town, its large windows displayed a carefully curated collection of beautiful things. Mannequins, draped in flowing silk dresses and adorned with sparkling necklaces, seemed to beckon passers-by inside. The window displays changed weekly, each one a miniature work of art, showcasing the boutique's latest treasures. Inside, the air was always filled with the soft scent of perfume and the gentle murmur of conversation. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow on the plush velvet seating and polished wooden floors. Racks of designer clothing lined the walls, each piece carefully chosen for its quality and style. Glass cases displayed delicate jewelry, from antique brooches to modern diamond earrings. There were silk scarves in every color imaginable, leather handbags with intricate details, and elegant hats perfect for a special occasion. Mrs. Davies, the owner of La Boutique Chic, had a keen eye for beauty and a passion for fashion. She had opened the boutique 20 years ago, and it had quickly become a favorite among the town's most stylish residents. Mrs. Davies believed that everyone deserved to feel beautiful, and she took pride in helping her customers find pieces that made them feel confident and radiant. She ran the boutique with a firm but fair hand, demanding the highest standards of customer service and attention to detail from her employees. Emily thrived in this environment. She loved the beauty that surrounded her, and she had a natural talent for helping customers find the perfect items. She knew the inventory inside and out, and she could effortlessly put together outfits that were both stylish and flattering. Mrs. Davies recognized Emily's potential and had quickly promoted her to a senior sales associate. For Sarah, La Boutique Chic was a constant reminder of everything she lacked. She admired the beautiful clothes and jewelry, but she knew she could never afford them. She felt out of place amidst the wealthy customers and the impeccably dressed employees. When she visited Emily at work, she felt like she was stepping into another world, a world that was forever out of her reach. It was in this world of luxury and beauty that Sarah's plan began to take shape. The boutique, with its expensive merchandise and trusting atmosphere, provided the perfect setting for her scheme. She knew it was wrong, but the jealousy monster inside her continued to whisper, telling her that Emily deserved to be taken down a peg, that it was Sarah's turn to have something that Emily wanted. The plan was risky, and it could have serious consequences, but Sarah was determined to go through with it. She would show Emily that life wasn't always fair, and that even the brightest stars could fall from grace. The following Tuesday, Sarah decided it was time to put her plan into action. She knew Emily was working the afternoon shift at the boutique, and she told Emily she'd stop by to say hello and browse. Inwardly, she was steeling herself, fighting the guilt that gnawed at her conscience. The jealousy monster, however, was louder. Sarah arrived at La Boutique Chic just after lunch. The store was relatively quiet, with only a few customers browsing the racks. Emily greeted her with a warm smile and a hug. "Sarah. I'm so glad you came. I wanted to show you the new shipment of scarves we just got in." Sarah forced a smile. "I'd love to see them." As Emily led her towards a display of colorful silk scarves, Sarah scanned the store, looking for an opportunity. Her heart pounded in her chest. She felt a nervous flutter in her stomach. This was really happening. Emily chatted animatedly about the scarves, pointing out the intricate patterns and the luxurious fabrics. Sarah pretended to listen, but her mind was racing. She needed to find something small and easily concealable, something valuable enough to make Emily look guilty but not so expensive that it would trigger an immediate alarm. Her eyes landed on a display of bracelets near the cash register. They were delicate, sparkly bracelets made of colorful beads and tiny crystals. One in particular caught her eye, a vibrant rainbow bracelet that shimmered in the light. It was perfect. "That bracelet is beautiful," Sarah said, pointing to the rainbow bracelet. "Can I see it?" Emily smiled. "Of course." She carefully unlocked the display case and handed the bracelet to Sarah. "It's one of my favorites. It's so cheerful and bright." Sarah held the bracelet in her hand, admiring its sparkle. This was it. This was the moment of truth. She glanced around the store. Mrs. Davies was helping a customer at the far end of the boutique, and Emily was focused on her. The opportunity was there. "It really is lovely," Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. "I think I'll try it on." As Emily turned to assist another customer who had just walked in, Sarah quickly slipped the bracelet onto her wrist. It felt cool and smooth against her skin. Then, with a swift movement, she slid the bracelet off her wrist and into her pocket. The deed was done. She looked up, her face flushed. Emily was still busy with the customer. Sarah forced a casual smile and walked away from the bracelet display, trying to appear as normal as possible. The jealousy monster inside her roared with triumph. The first step of her plan was complete. Now, all she had to do was plant the bracelet in Emily's purse. With the bracelet safely tucked away in her pocket, Sarah spent another half-hour at the boutique, chatting with Emily and pretending to admire the clothes. She even tried on a few dresses, making small talk about upcoming events and the latest fashion trends. All the while, she was carefully calculating her next move. She knew she needed to get Emily away from the boutique in order to plant the bracelet in her purse. She decided to suggest grabbing coffee at their favorite cafe, the Daily Grind, just a few blocks away. It was a place they had frequented since high school, a cozy spot with comfortable chairs and delicious pastries. "Hey, Emily," Sarah said, feigning a yawn. "I'm starting to get a little tired. Would you be up for grabbing a coffee at the Daily Grind? I could really use a caffeine boost." Emily hesitated for a moment. "I'm not sure, Sarah. I'm supposed to be helping Mrs. Davies with inventory later this afternoon." Sarah's heart sank. She hadn't anticipated this obstacle. "Oh, come on," she pleaded. "Just one coffee. We haven't had a chance to catch up in ages. And I really need your advice on something. Emily looked conflicted. She glanced towards Mrs. Davies, who was now organizing a display of handbags. Let me ask Mrs. Davies, she said. Sarah held her breath as Emily approached her boss. She watched as they spoke in hushed tones, Mrs. Davies occasionally glancing in Sarah's direction. Finally, Emily turned back to Sarah with a smile. Mrs. Davies said it's okay if I take a short break, Emily announced. But I have to be back in an hour. Sarah's face lit up. Great. That's all the time we need. As they walked towards the daily grind, Sarah tried to act as normal as possible, engaging Emily in conversation and laughing at her jokes. But beneath her cheerful facade, she was a bundle of nerves. She kept reaching into her pocket to make sure the bracelet was still there, her fingers brushing against its cool, smooth surface. She knew that planting the bracelet in Emily's purse was a terrible thing to do, but the jealousy monster had convinced her that it was necessary. It told her that Emily was too perfect, too happy, and that she needed to be brought down to earth. Sarah told herself that she wasn't really trying to hurt Emily, just teach her a lesson. But deep down, she knew that she was lying to herself. She was driven by envy and resentment, and she was willing to sacrifice her friendship with Emily to satisfy her own selfish desires. The daily grind came into view, its warm, inviting glow beckoning them inside. Sarah took a deep breath, bracing herself for the next stage of her plan. The clock was ticking, and she had very little time to pull it off. The daily grind was bustling with activity when they arrived. Students hunched over textbooks, business people tapped away on laptops, and friends chatted over steaming mugs. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, a comforting scent that usually relaxed Sarah. Today, however, it did little to soothe her frayed nerves. They found a small table near the window and ordered their usual drinks, a latte for Emily and a black coffee for Sarah. As they waited for their order, Sarah surreptitiously assessed the situation. Emily had placed her large tote bag on the floor next to her chair. It was a stylish bag, made of soft leather, with several compartments and pockets. Perfect, Sarah thought grimly. Their drinks arrived, and Emily launched into a story about a difficult customer she had dealt with earlier that day. Sarah nodded and murmured in all the right places, pretending to listen intently while her mind raced, calculating the best way to slip the bracelet into Emily's bag unnoticed. She knew she had to be quick and discreet. If Emily saw her, the whole plan would be ruined. She waited for the opportune moment, her heart pounding in her chest. Finally, Emily paused to take a sip of her latte. It was now or never. Sarah reached into her pocket, her fingers closing around the cool, smooth surface of the bracelet. She slowly pulled it out, keeping it hidden beneath the table. With a practiced movement, she leaned forward, pretending to adjust her scarf, and subtly dropped the bracelet into Emily's open tote bag. The bracelet landed with a soft thud, barely audible above the background noise of the cafe. Sarah quickly straightened up, her face flushed, and glanced at Emily. Emily was still sipping her latte, completely oblivious to what had just happened. Relief washed over Sarah, followed by a surge of guilt. She had done it. She had planted the evidence. But as she looked at Emily, chatting animatedly about her day, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she had just made a terrible mistake. The jealousy monster, however, was quick to silence her doubts. It told her that Emily would be fine, that this was just a harmless prank, a way to teach her a lesson. But Sarah knew deep down that it was more than that. She had betrayed her best friend, and she would never be able to take it back. For the rest of their coffee break, Sarah struggled to maintain a normal conversation. She felt like she was wearing a mask, hiding her true feelings behind a facade of cheerfulness. Every time Emily laughed or smiled, Sarah felt a pang of guilt. She wanted to confess everything, to tell Emily the truth and beg for forgiveness. But the jealousy monster held her back, whispering that it was too late, that she had gone too far. The monster had her trapped in its web of deceit, and it wouldn't let her go. Back at La Boutique Chic, Emily thanked Sarah for the coffee and hurried back to work, leaving Sarah standing on the sidewalk, feeling a mixture of relief and dread. The deed was done, but the consequences were yet to come. She knew that she should turn around, go back inside, and confess everything. But the jealousy monster held her captive, whispering that it was too late, that she had come too far to back down now. Sarah wandered aimlessly for a while, her mind consumed with guilt and anxiety. She couldn't shake the image of Emily's smiling face, the genuine warmth in her eyes. How could she do this to her best friend? Finally, she decided to return to the boutique. She told herself that she just wanted to see if everything was okay, to make sure that her plan was going according to schedule. But deep down, she knew that she was hoping that something would go wrong, that the bracelet would be discovered before she had to reveal it, that she could somehow avoid the inevitable confrontation. She walked into La Boutique Chic, trying to appear nonchalant. Emily was helping a customer try on a dress, her face radiant with enthusiasm. Mrs. Davies was behind the cash register, counting money. Everything seemed normal. Sarah lingered near the jewelry display, pretending to admire the necklaces and earrings. She kept glancing at Emily, her heart aching with guilt. She wanted to tell her everything, to beg for her forgiveness. But she couldn't bring herself to do it. After about 15 minutes, Mrs. Davies finished counting the money and approached Sarah. "Is there anything I can help you with, dear?" she asked politely. Sarah jumped, startled. "Oh, no, thank you," she stammered. "I was just admiring the jewelry. Everything is so beautiful." Mrs. Davies smiled. "Thank you. We pride ourselves on offering unique and exquisite pieces." Sarah hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. This was it. The moment of truth. "Actually," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "I think I saw something. Something suspicious." Mrs. Davies's smile faded. "Suspicious?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" Sarah swallowed hard, her hands trembling. "Well," she began, "I was talking to Emily earlier, and I think I saw her put something in her bag. Something that didn't belong to her." Mrs. Davies's eyes widened. "Are you saying that you think Emily stole something?" Sarah nodded, her face flushed with shame. "I don't want to believe it," she said, "but I think I saw her slip a bracelet into her purse when she thought no one was looking." Mrs. Davies stared at Sarah in disbelief. "Emily would never do such a thing," she said firmly. "She's one of my most trusted employees." "I know," Sarah said, "but I saw it with my own eyes. I just thought you should know." Mrs. Davies hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "I suppose we have no choice but to investigate," she said reluctantly. "Emily," she called out. "Can you come here for a moment?" Sarah watched as Emily approached, her face still glowing from helping the customer. Sarah's heart twisted with guilt. She knew that she was about to destroy her best friend's life. But the jealousy monster was still whispering in her ear, telling her that it was necessary, that Emily deserved it. And Sarah, trapped in its web of deceit, could only stand by and watch as her plan unfolded. Emily approached, her brow furrowed with concern. "What's wrong, Mrs. Davies? Is everything okay?" Mrs. Davies hesitated, glancing at Sarah before turning back to Emily. "Sarah tells me that she saw you. Well, she thinks she saw you put something in your bag earlier. Something from the store." Emily's eyes widened in disbelief. "What? That's ridiculous. I would never steal anything from the boutique." "I know, dear," Mrs. Davies said soothingly, "but Sarah insists that she saw something. I'm afraid we have no choice but to check your bag." Emily's face flushed with anger. "This is absurd. I can't believe you're even considering this." She turned to Sarah, her eyes filled with hurt and betrayal. "How could you, Sarah? How could you accuse me of something like this?" Sarah avoided Emily's gaze, her heart pounding in her chest. "I'm sorry, Emily," she mumbled. "I just thought I saw something. I didn't want to cause any trouble." "Trouble?" Emily exclaimed. "You're accusing me of theft. That's a lot more than just trouble." Mrs. Davies stepped between them, trying to defuse the situation. "Please, Emily, let's just get this over with. If you have nothing to hide, then there's nothing to worry about." Reluctantly, Emily placed her tote bag on the counter and opened it. Mrs. Davies began to rummage through the contents, carefully examining each item. Sarah watched with bated breath, her stomach churning with anxiety. Mrs. Davies pulled out Emily's wallet, her keys, her phone, a small makeup bag, and a paperback book. Everything seemed normal. But then, she reached into the bottom of the bag and pulled out a small, sparkly object. It was the rainbow bracelet. Mrs. Davies held it up for everyone to see. "Emily," she said, her voice filled with disappointment, "what is this doing in your bag?" Emily stared at the bracelet in disbelief, her mouth agape. I don't know," she stammered. "I've never seen that before in my life. I swear, I didn't put it there." "But Sarah said she saw you," Mrs. Davies pointed out. Emily turned to Sarah, her eyes pleading. "Sarah, tell them. Tell them you're mistaken. You know I would never do something like this." Sarah hesitated for a moment, her conscience warring with the jealousy monster. She wanted to tell the truth, to confess everything and beg for Emily's forgiveness. But the monster was too strong. It whispered that if she backed down now, she would lose everything. With a forced expression of concern, Sarah shook her head. "I'm sorry, Emily," she said, her voice trembling. "I wish I could say I was wrong, but I saw you put it in your bag. I don't know why you did it, but I saw it." Emily's face crumpled, her eyes filled with tears. "I can't believe you would do this to me, Sarah," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "I thought we were best friends." Sarah turned away, unable to meet Emily's gaze. The guilt was overwhelming, but the jealousy monster still held her in its grip. Mrs. Davies sighed, shaking her head in disappointment. "Emily, I'm so sorry," she said, "but I have no choice but to call the police. I can't ignore something like this." Emily's eyes widened in horror. "The police? Mrs. Davies, please. I didn't do anything. I swear, someone must have put that bracelet in my bag." "I wish I could believe you, dear," Mrs. Davies said sadly, "but Sarah saw you. And I can't just let this go. I have a responsibility to protect my business." With a heavy heart, Mrs. Davies reached for the phone and dialed the police. Sarah stood by, paralyzed with guilt, as Mrs. Davies explained the situation to the officer on the other end of the line. She described the stolen bracelet, Sarah's accusation, and Emily's denial. As Mrs. Davies spoke, Emily's tears streamed down her face. She couldn't believe that her best friend had betrayed her so completely. She couldn't believe that she was about to be arrested for a crime she didn't commit. When Mrs. Davies hung up the phone, she turned to Emily with a sigh. "The police are on their way," she said. "I'm so sorry, dear, but I have to do what's right." Emily slumped against the counter, her body trembling. "This is a nightmare," she whispered. "A complete nightmare." Sarah watched as Emily's world crumbled around her. She knew that she was responsible for this, that she had caused all of this pain and suffering. But the jealousy monster still wouldn't let her confess. It told her that it was too late, that she had gone too far, that she would only make things worse if she told the truth. While they waited for the police to arrive, an awkward silence filled the boutique. Mrs. Davies tried to comfort Emily, but Emily was inconsolable. Sarah stood in the corner. The police arrived a few minutes later, 2 officers in crisp uniforms. They listened to Mrs. Davies's account of the events, their expressions grim. They questioned Emily, who vehemently denied the accusation, her voice shaking with emotion. The officers then turned their attention to Sarah, asking her to recount what she had seen. Sarah repeated her fabricated story, her voice trembling with guilt. She tried to avoid Emily's gaze, but she could feel her friend's hurt and betrayal piercing her like a knife. After taking statements from everyone involved, the officers decided to conduct a more thorough investigation. They dusted the bracelet for fingerprints, carefully collecting any evidence that might help them determine who had handled it. "We'll take this bracelet back to the lab," one of the officers explained. "We'll run the fingerprints and see if we can get a match. That should help us determine who was actually handling the bracelet." Emily looked relieved. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I know the fingerprints will prove that I didn't touch it." Sarah's heart sank. She hadn't considered the possibility of fingerprinting the bracelet. She had been so focused on planting the evidence in Emily's bag that she hadn't thought about the consequences of leaving her own fingerprints on the item. As the officers carefully placed the bracelet in an evidence bag, Sarah's mind raced. She knew that her fingerprints would be all over it. She had held it in her hand, admired its sparkle, and slipped it into her pocket. There was no way to deny it. The jealousy monster, which had been so vocal throughout the day, suddenly fell silent. Sarah was alone with her guilt and her fear. She knew that her plan was about to unravel, that her lies were about to be exposed. The officers took Emily down to the police station for questioning, leaving Sarah and Mrs. Davies alone in the boutique. Mrs. Davies looked at Sarah with a mixture of disappointment and suspicion. "I can't believe this happened," Mrs. Davies said, shaking her head. "I'm so disappointed in Emily. I thought she was better than this." Sarah didn't respond. She couldn't meet Mrs. Davies's gaze. She knew that it was only a matter of time before the truth came out. And when it did, she would have to face the consequences of her actions. She felt sick and scared. Hours passed, and Sarah remained at the boutique, writhing with anxiety. Mrs. Davies tried to keep busy, helping customers and organizing displays, but the tension in the air was palpable. Finally, the phone rang. Mrs. Davies answered it, her expression tense. She listened for a moment, then her eyes widened in shock. She turned to Sarah, her face pale. "That was the police," she said, her voice trembling. "They found fingerprints on the bracelet. And they belong to..." She paused, her gaze fixed on Sarah. "They belong to you." The silence that followed Mrs. Davies's pronouncement was deafening. Sarah stood frozen, her face pale with terror. She knew that her carefully constructed web of lies had finally unraveled. "What?" Sarah managed to stammer, her voice barely audible. "That's impossible. There must be some mistake." Mrs. Davies shook her head sadly. "I'm afraid there's no mistake, Sarah. The police confirmed it. Your fingerprints are all over the bracelet." Sarah's knees buckled beneath her, and she sank into a nearby chair. The weight of her guilt and shame was almost unbearable. She knew that she had no choice but to confess. "It's true," she whispered, her voice choked with tears. "I took the bracelet. I planted it in Emily's bag." Mrs. Davies stared at Sarah in disbelief. "Why?" she asked, her voice filled with hurt and confusion. "Why would you do something like that to Emily? She's your best friend." Sarah sobbed uncontrollably, unable to meet Mrs. Davies's gaze. "I don't know," she cried. "I was jealous of her. I was jealous of her success, her happiness, her job here at the boutique. I wanted to hurt her, to bring her down to my level." Mrs. Davies shook her head in disgust. "I can't believe what I'm hearing," she said. "I thought you were a better person than this, Sarah." Just then, the police officers returned to the boutique, escorting a relieved-looking Emily. When Emily saw Sarah sitting in the chair, sobbing uncontrollably, she knew that the truth had come out. "What's going on?" Emily asked, her voice filled with cautious hope. Mrs. Davies turned to Emily, her expression a mixture of relief and anger. "It was Sarah," she said. "She took the bracelet. She planted it in your bag. Emily stared at Sarah in shock and disbelief. Sarah? But why? Sarah looked up at Emily, her eyes filled with tears and remorse. I'm so sorry, Emily, she sobbed. I was jealous of you. I did a terrible thing. Can you ever forgive me? Emily's face was a mixture of hurt, anger, and confusion. She couldn't understand how her best friend could have betrayed her in such a cruel and malicious way. I don't know, Sarah, she said, her voice trembling. I just don't know. The police officers stepped forward, placing Sarah under arrest. As they led her out of the boutique, Sarah looked back at Emily one last time, her eyes pleading for forgiveness. But Emily just turned away, unable to face her former friend. For Emily, the revelation that Sarah had framed her was both a relief and a deep wound. She was relieved that the truth had finally come out, that she was no longer suspected of theft. But she was also heartbroken that her best friend had been capable of such a cruel and calculated act of betrayal. The trust that had formed the foundation of their friendship was shattered, leaving Emily feeling lost and alone. In the days that followed Sarah's arrest, Emily struggled to come to terms with what had happened. The initial relief that came with being exonerated was quickly replaced by a deep sense of hurt and betrayal. She couldn't understand how Sarah, her best friend since kindergarten, could have been capable of such a cruel and calculated act. She replayed their friendship in her mind, searching for clues, for signs that she had missed. Had Sarah always been jealous of her? Had their friendship been built on a foundation of envy and resentment? The questions haunted her, keeping her awake at night. Mrs. Davies was incredibly supportive, offering Emily time off from work and reassuring her that she had done nothing wrong. The other employees at La Boutique Chic were also kind and understanding, offering words of encouragement and support. Despite the support of her friends and colleagues, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness and loss. The betrayal had shaken her confidence and made her question her judgment. She found herself withdrawing from social situations, afraid to trust anyone new. She also struggled with feelings of anger and resentment towards Sarah. She wanted to confront her, to demand an explanation, to make her understand the pain she had caused. But she knew that a confrontation would only prolong the agony. Instead, she decided to focus on healing and moving forward. She threw herself into her work, finding solace in the beauty and creativity that surrounded her at the boutique. She spent time with her family, reconnecting with loved ones who had always been a source of strength and support. Slowly, gradually, Emily began to heal. The pain of the betrayal didn't disappear completely, but it became less intense, less consuming. She realized that she couldn't let Sarah's actions define her life. She had to move on, to rebuild her trust, and to find happiness again. One evening, as she was closing up the boutique, Mrs. Davies approached her with a gentle smile. You know, Emily, she said, you're stronger than you think you are. What Sarah did was terrible, but it doesn't have to break you. You have so much to offer the world. Don't let her take that away from you. Emily smiled back, her eyes. A few weeks later, Sarah was released on bail, pending her trial. She knew that she had to try to explain her actions to Emily, to make her understand the depth of her jealousy and the desperation that had driven her to commit such a terrible act. She went to La Boutique Chic, knowing that Emily would be working. She hesitated outside the door, her heart pounding in her chest. She wasn't sure if Emily would even speak to her, but she had to try. She took a deep breath and walked inside. Emily was helping a customer try on a dress, her face bright and cheerful. When she saw Sarah, her smile faded, and her expression hardened. What do you want, Sarah? Emily asked, her voice cold and distant. Sarah swallowed hard, her hands trembling. I need to talk to you, Emily, she said. I need to explain. Emily shook her head. There's nothing to explain, Sarah. You tried to frame me for theft. You betrayed me in the worst possible way. I don't want to hear anything you have to say. Mrs. Davies, who had been watching the exchange from behind the cash register, stepped forward. "Sarah, I think you should leave," she said firmly. "You're not welcome here." "Please, Mrs. Davies," Sarah pleaded. "Just give me a chance to talk to Emily. I know I did a terrible thing, but I want her to understand why." Mrs. Davies hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "All right," she said. "But keep it brief. And if you cause any trouble, I'll call the police." Mrs. Davies excused herself to tend to another customer, leaving Sarah and Emily alone. The silence between them was thick with tension and resentment. "Emily," Sarah began, her voice trembling, "I know that what I did was unforgivable. I was jealous of you, of your success, of your happiness. I felt like you had everything, and I had nothing. I know it was wrong, but I couldn't help myself. The jealousy consumed me. It made me do things I never thought I was capable of." She paused, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, Emily," she sobbed. "I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted to feel like we were on the same level, that I wasn't always living in your shadow." Emily listened in silence, her expression unreadable. She couldn't deny that she had always been more fortunate than Sarah, that she had always had an easier time achieving her goals. But that didn't excuse Sarah's actions. "I don't understand, Sarah," Emily said, her voice barely a whisper. "Why couldn't you just talk to me? Why did you have to resort to such a cruel and malicious plan?" Sarah shook her head, her tears flowing freely. "I don't know," she cried. "I was stupid, I was selfish, I was jealous. I let my emotions control me. I wish I could take it back, but I can't. All I can do is say that I'm sorry." Emily looked at Sarah, her heart aching with a mixture of pity and anger. She could see the genuine remorse in Sarah's eyes, but she wasn't sure if she could ever forgive her. The betrayal had cut too deep. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Sarah," Emily said, her voice trembling. "What you did was unforgivable. You almost ruined my life. You shattered our friendship. I don't know if we can ever be friends again." Sarah nodded, her face understanding. "I know," she said softly. "I know I messed everything up." Sarah's trial took place a few months later. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and she had no choice but to plead guilty to the charges of theft and filing a false police report. The judge sentenced her to community service and probation. While she avoided jail time, the consequences of her actions were far-reaching. She lost her job at the bookstore, and she found it difficult to find new employment. Her reputation was tarnished, and people whispered about her behind her back. But the most devastating consequence of her actions was the loss of her friendship with Emily. Despite Sarah's repeated attempts to apologize and make amends, Emily refused to speak to her. The trust between them was broken beyond repair. Sarah was forced to face the reality of what she had done. Her jealousy and insecurity had driven her to commit a terrible act, and she had lost everything as a result. She was alone, friendless, and filled with remorse. She spent her days volunteering at a local soup kitchen, trying to make amends for her past mistakes. She realized that true happiness didn't come from material possessions or external validation. It came from kindness, compassion, and genuine connections with others. She often thought about Emily, wondering if she would ever be able to forgive her. She knew that she didn't deserve Emily's forgiveness, but she couldn't help but hope that one day, they could find a way to reconnect. One afternoon, as she was serving lunch at the soup kitchen, she saw a familiar face in line. It was Mrs. Davies. Mrs. Davies looked surprised to see Sarah, but she offered a small, hesitant smile. "Sarah," she said. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Mrs. Davies," Sarah replied. "It's good to see you. I'm volunteering here." Mrs. Davies nodded. "I know," she said. "I've heard good things about your work." They chatted for a few minutes, catching up on each other's lives. Sarah learned that Emily was doing well at the boutique, that she had been promoted to assistant manager. She was happy for Emily, but also saddened by the knowledge that she would never be a part of her life again. As Mrs. Davies was leaving, she paused and turned back to Sarah. "You know, Sarah," she said, "what you did was wrong. But I believe that people can change. I hope that one day, you can find a way to forgive yourself." Sarah smiled, her eyes filled with a glimmer of hope. "Thank you, Mrs. Davies," she said. "I hope so too." Years passed. Emily continued to thrive at La Boutique Chic, eventually becoming the manager of the store. She built a successful career, surrounded by beauty and creativity. She also cultivated new friendships, learning to trust again, but always with a cautious heart. She never forgot about Sarah. She often wondered what had become of her, if she had found happiness, if she had learned from her mistakes. She knew that she could never completely forgive Sarah for what she had done, but she also recognized that holding on to anger and resentment would only poison her own heart. One day, while browsing through a local newspaper, Emily saw a small article about a woman who was being honored for her volunteer work at a soup kitchen. The woman's name was Sarah. Emily felt a pang of emotion as she read the article. She learned that Sarah had dedicated her life to helping others, that she had found a sense of purpose and fulfillment in serving those in need. She realized that Sarah had truly changed, that she had learned from her mistakes and was trying to make amends for her past actions. Emily knew that she would never be able to be best friends with Sarah again. The trust was gone, and the pain was too deep. But she also knew that she couldn't continue to hold on to her anger and resentment. It was time to let go, to forgive, and to move on. She thought about all the things that she had learned from the experience. She had learned the importance of true friendship, the value of trust, and the destructive nature of jealousy. She had also learned that everyone is capable of making mistakes, but that it's also possible to learn from those mistakes and to become a better person. As she closed the newspaper, Emily felt a sense of peace and closure wash over her. She knew that she had done everything she could to heal from the betrayal, and that it was time to move forward. She smiled, thinking about all the good things in her life, her successful career, her loving family, her supportive friends. She was grateful for all that she had, and she was determined to live her life to the fullest, without letting the past hold her back. She knew that true friendship was a precious gift, one that should be cherished and protected. And she knew that jealousy was a dangerous emotion, one that could destroy even the strongest bonds. As she looked out the window at the setting sun, Emily whispered a silent prayer for Sarah, hoping that she had found peace and happiness in her new life. And she whispered a prayer for herself.